Bullocks was a chain of department stores from 1907 until 1995.
It's Bullock's White Flour 2-day sale with sensational savings throughout the store, Thursday and Friday.
We're a part of your life.
In 1896, John G. Bullock arrived in Los Angeles, deposited his money in the Citizens National Bank, and began hunting for work. In February, he found an ad in the local paper advertising for help with selling bankrupt stock owned by Arthur Letts. Bullock would soon work with Letts, who would go on to become a proprietor of the Broadway department store at Broadway and 4th Streets. Letts observed the potential in Bullock and had him work in many of the departments. As the store expanded, nearby buildings were opened, but it became necessary to expand into a modern addition. In 1906, a company was building a store at Broadway and 7th Streets, but construction ceased at the 7th floor because of lack of capital. The owner approached Letts, who signed a 50-year lease on the unfinished building with rent kept low for the first 10 years of rent. Letts directed Bullock to open the satellite store under his own name, calling it Bullock's Department Store. Bullock brought along his Canadian friend, P.G. Winnett, who started as a cash boy. Because he was such an excellent worker, Winnett became manager of the men's furnishing. The store opened on March 4th, 1906, and each year the staff handed out violets to customers to celebrate this anniversary. Because being a part of the community was important, children got haircuts while sitting on a carousel animal. A lending library was set up for all customers. Bullock's namesake store was so successful, it underwent a major expansion in 1912, and again in 1917, and in 1919, increasing its total retail space to an unprecedented 460,000 square feet. In 1923, Bullock and his business partner, P.G. Winnett, bought out Letts' interest after his death, and the companies became completely separated. Now stretching the entire block of 7th Street from Broadway to Hill, Bullocks was the anchor of an upscale shopping district that included Robinson's, the May Company, and the Broadway department stores. In 1929, Bullock and Winnett opened a luxury branch referred to at the time as the Bullocks Wilshire, which was located at 3050 Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. It opened as a second Bullock store, a luxury branch on Wilshire Boulevard. The location was known to have a parking valet, a doorman who tipped his cap when you walked in as the customer entered the 230,000 square foot mecca of West Coast fashion. Known as Bullock's Wilshire, this storied California department store was the epitome of futuristic and relatively accessible elegance. The lavishly appointed Art Deco style, Bullock's Wilshire was designed with an elite clientele in mind. As though the Great Depression didn't exist, it was immediately embraced by the upper crust of Los Angeles society, who remained loyal patrons for decades. As the population of Los Angeles spread to the suburbs, additional Bullock stores continued to open. The company spared no expense in architectural design or luxurious interiors, and as a result, a number of these stores have been recognized for their architectural significance and designated as historic landmarks at regional, state, and national levels. In Palm Springs, Bullock's operated as a seasonal shop, a resort store catering to wealthy tourists during the winter season. It first opened in a Spanish Mediterranean-style building of the Desert Inn. The store also provided the furnishings for multiple demonstration homes in the 1940s. Along with beautiful stores, quality merchandise and professional sales staff offered excellent customer service. The success of the Bullock stores could also be attributed to the company's unique business model that made every store virtually autonomous. Each had its own management staff, buyers, and advertising team. creating strong regional identities for each Bullock store, extended to its own fashion labels, which bore a store's location as well as some variation of the Bullock's logo. In 1944, Bullocks acquired I. Magnin & Company, a San Francisco-based upscale specialty chain. Starting in 1958, Bullocks built a series of 4 shopping centers initially called Bullocks Fashion Squares, small, elegant, and open air with large Bullock stores dominating, surrounded by only 20 or 30 much smaller specialty stores such as I. Magnin, Desmond's, Mandel's, and Silverwood's. The total gross buildable area of Bullock's Santa Ana, for example, was 340,000 square feet versus only 238,000 square feet for other retailers combined. Bullock's Fashion Square in Santa Ana opened in 1958. It was followed by the Fashion Square for the San Fernando Valley, later called Sherman Oaks Fashion Square, in 1962. Followed by a Fashion Square in Torrance. It would later be called the Del Amo Fashion Square in September of 1966. The last one built was the Fashion Square in La Habra, which uniquely included a Buffum's branch from the beginning, in April of 1968. In 1965, Federated purchased Bullocks and I. Magnin, 2 upscale department stores based in California. The Federal Trade Commission forced a consent decree on Federated as a result of the purchases so that the company was prohibited from acquiring any more department stores until 1970. In the 1970s, to differentiate itself from the full-line Bullock stores, the very exclusive Wilshire location dropped its apostrophe and became Bullock's Wilshire and began its own expansion. In February of 1970, Federated Department Stores replaced its Bullock's Realty Corporation, which owned and managed the Fashion Square malls, with an organization called Transwest Management. Transwest sold the Torrance, future Del Amo, Fashion Square in March of that year to new co-owners Great Lakes and Gilliford Glazer & Associates, while selling the 3 other Fashion Squares for $13 million to Urban Investment and Development Company, UIDC, who would sell them in 1973 to Bank of America Realty Investor and Draper & Kramer for $16.3 million. Bullock stores continue to open throughout Southern California, often as a retail anchor in the newly popular indoor shopping malls. Expansion continued up through 1980 and included stores in Northern California, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. Company optimism didn't last, however, as severe economic recession in the United States during the early 1980s caused the parent company to close its Northern California stores in order to remain profitable. It was in 1983, however, that Federated shuttered the Bullock's North Division and sold most of its locations to Seattle, Washington retailer Nordstrom. In 1989, Canadian entrepreneur Robert Campo used junk bonds to buy Federated in what many considered one of the ugliest takeovers in U.S. retail history. Macy's purchased Bullocks and I. Magnin from Campo, thrusting Macy's into extreme debt. In order to recover, Macy's filed for bankruptcy protection in 1992 and began dismantling the Bullocks brand. Bullock's Wilshire had recently become I. Magnin, but now Bullock's was merged into Macy's South Division. These sweeping changes to what had once been Federated's most profitable division backfired terribly, and as fiercely loyal Bullock's client base stayed away in droves, causing a sharp decline in company profits. The South Coast Plaza Bullocks in Costa Mesa remained one of the chain's flagship stores until it was renamed I. Magnin in 1990. The end came quickly for Bullocks after Macy's filed for bankruptcy protection in 1992, with the Bullocks Wilshire stores being renamed I. Magnin 2 years before. In 1994, a severe earthquake heavily damaged the Bullock store at the Northridge Fashion Plaza in Northridge, California. But by then, it was too late for Bullocks as a name brand. Underperforming I. Magnin and Bullock's locations were closed, and I. Magnin itself was dissolved in January of 1995. In 1995, Federated resumed ownership and sought to consolidate its mini retail holdings. By the next year, the remaining Bullock stores were either closed or renamed as Macy's, thus ending Bullock's 89-year legacy as one of Southern California's premier shopping experiences. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thanks.